Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm talking about the solo album from Paul Hartnoll, The Ideal Condition. So, after the Blue album, Orbital broke up, obviously. Of course, as we know, this wasn't the end of their story, but it is undoubtedly where their story starts to get a little complicated. Because Paul and Phil both released solo material, and you bet I got myself into this stuff at my earliest convenience. And we'll start with the one who has released a lot more outside of the main project, Paul. I've already talked about Paul's later work on 858 and with Vince Clarke on 2 Square back around the time those albums came out, and I was pretty enthusiastic towards them. And I'll be honest, when I first checked out The Ideal Condition, I was initially a little weirded out because I was like, what? There's only one song on here that actually sounds like Orbital. But I was also fascinated by it, mainly because of the extensive use of live instrumentation, including, yes, a full orchestra. Orchestral Orbital is almost like some kind of, weird wet dream for me. And I immediately regret wording it that way, but screw it. And hey, at this point in Orbital's back catalog, the lowest rating I've given so far is an 8.5. And even with the Blue album, I was really stretching and trying to be critical of an album that, while I had nitpicks of, never actually thought about said nitpicks while listening to it. Not every Orbital album has to be super conceptual. That one wasn't trying to be. But listen, Orbital may be my favorite band, but that doesn't mean I can't be critical of them. And I'll just come out and say, even from the get-go, The Ideal Condition has mostly just been an okay album to me. There's some fantastic moments on this album that I've returned to frequently, but I can't just give the whole package a pass and say it's great. It really isn't. Now, listening to Paul and Phil's solo material has got me thinking a lot about what makes Orbital tick, what each brother brings to the table. One might listen to 858 and think, oh, Paul clearly has most of the ideas and is the real brains behind the operation. I'm not really sure what to think about that. I don't think Paul is fully capable of carrying the full spirit of Orbital all by himself. He came really close with 858, but he just came a tad short. Both figuratively and literally, the album needed to be longer. My issues with 858, and hell, with the Blue album too, also apply to The Ideal Condition, but to a much more noticeable degree. The Ideal Condition is also really short, it's also fragmented. Let's just get right into it. Now, as I said, the whole live orchestra meets Orbital thing is somewhat of a dream come true for me. But first of all, on most of these tracks, if you hadn't told me this was Paul Hartnoll, I might not have guessed by myself. Because it's not Orbital with orchestral accompaniment, it's Paul conducting an orchestra and occasionally adding some electronic and also even rock and maybe punk elements in here as well sometimes. I think at this point in time, with 858 really showing me what kind of artist Paul can be by himself, The Ideal Condition isn't quite as weird to listen to as it was when I was in high school, and the whole, dude, this doesn't sound like Orbital thing, I'm past that now. Orbital is Paul and Phil, not just Paul. But I'll be real, the whole live instrumentation thing, while a respectable risk for sure, turns out wildly inconsistent results. Some tracks on here are freaking brilliant, and some tracks on here just... The standout on this album is by far the opener, Haven't We Met Before, where Paul really makes the orchestra feel big and grand and epic, and it is so freaking awesome. It's also got a bit more electronic elements, like a little synth bass and some drum machines to make it feel a little more Orbital-y. But the grand orchestrations are just fucking breathtaking. And on top of that, it's got a really catchy and hummable melody to boot. Could make for a great theme song to a movie or something. I kinda have of wish Paul would throw this in one of his live sets every now and then, just because it'd be fun and add some variety. And the other track I really love on this album is For Silence, the close second favorite. It's a catchy pop-ish tune that actually resembles Funny Break One Is Enough a little bit, but with more delicate singing. And of course the orchestra added in near the end give it that extra punch of memorability. As far as like really fantastic standout songs for me, it's mainly those first two and that's it, but there are other good songs on here. The album's closer, Dust Motes. That's another standout for me. It's similar to Haven't We Met Before, but without the electronic elements. It's just a straight orchestral piece, save for some fuzzy synth pads that bookend the track. Again, it's really grand and epic, with almost operatic female singing as well that even further intensifies the experience. I mean, it's not that catchy, and I couldn't hum the tune to you if I tried, but it does make for a really effective finish to the album. And I also quite like the song The Unsteady Waltz. It definitely lives up to its title, I'll say that. This is easily the least electronic song on here, purely performed on the piano with a string quartet or something and some oboes and clarinets too. And it's just kind of a cute piece, really. Like the soundtrack to some short student film about some awkward guy learning how to ballroom dance and maybe falling in love in the process. Just a song that always puts a smile on my face anytime I hear it. Simple but effective. And of course there's Patchwork Guilt, which is the above mentioned one track on the album that actually sounds like Orbital. And I have mixed feelings on the track. On one hand, it's an Orbital style track. It's danceable, it's catchy, even a little mood heavy. It stands out, for sure. I enjoy it anytime I hear it. But I also can't help but feel like it's really out of place on this album. All the other songs on this album show Paul really going out of his way and like fulfilling his dreams that he couldn't really achieve under the Orbital name. But Patchwork Guilt feels like a bit of a compromise. Like he had to put this song on here just so that he wouldn't alienate fans with this album. And to be fair, while it is a good song, it also kind of feels like a leftover B-side from the Blue album and probably wouldn't have stuck out quite so much on a real Orbital album. And unfortunately, it all just kind of goes downhill from there. All the other tracks on this album don't really have much to recommend them. I mean, Please obviously sticks out as a sore thumb, as Paul fulfilling his dream of being able to make a song with Robert Smith of The Cure. And while the song is catchy, this original album version is also by far the worst version of it. Paul remixed it into more of an Orbital-esque song on 858 to much more impressive results. And that's not even my favorite version of that track either. There's a version called the KCB mix that is a lot smoother and poppier and dancier, and quite frankly is an absolute pleasure to listen to. It's the only time I've ever liked a remix of an Orbital song, or Orbital-related song, more than I like the original. And yeah, the original, it's super rough and aggressive and maybe almost kind of punk influenced, and just doesn't sound good at all. Doesn't even fit well among these other stately and precisely orchestrated tracks. And also, this is going to sound terrible, but I'm not a huge Cure fan myself. Not really into that whole goth scene. The Cure feel a little out of my element. I know I'm gonna have a ton of people go batshit insane on me for this little comment. I like some songs of theirs, like Just Like Heaven in a Forest, but they don't do much for me. Sorry, please don't kill me. Yeah, I suppose Please wasn't a bad track originally, had the potential to be really good, but with these other versions, like the KCB mix and the 858 remix fulfilling said potential, there's really no reason for me to ever come back to the original again, I'll be brutally honest. And there's also Aggro, which was my least favorite for a long time for a lot of the same reasons I don't really like the original version of Please. Super rough and aggressive, doesn't sound very good or fit very well into what Paul was trying to do for this album. But I will admit it is rather catchy, could have the potential to be better with some reworking. I guess it's grown on me a tiny bit, but I'd sooner skip over it and just straight go into Dust Motes personally. Again, it's not my thing, really. And there are songs that just do nothing for me despite having the elements to do so. Most notably, Nothing Else Matters. And I'm not sure why but this song just doesn't do anything for me. Like, the orchestras are nice, the singing is alright, it's catchy, I guess, but the song just doesn't stick out. It feels entirely skippable. I guess if there's anything, that might be why I don't care for this one, is that the singer sounds kinda weird, but I don't know. It's just not that great a song. And there is one song on here I straight don't like. Simple Sounds. It's like some kind of medieval sounding instrumental that, I mean, it at least fits with the overall sound and theme of the album, but it just sounds really bad. Like, it's got these synth harpsichord melodies at the beginning that really clash with each other and sound wrong. And the main melodies are played on a recorder, like the cheap toy recorder kind. Like, really? Really? I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't hate this track, but it is extremely off-putting and not in a charming way either, like the Unsteady Waltz. Yeah, so overall, I mean, there are a lot of things that I like about this album. There are some fantastic songs, well, two really, but it's just really all over the place. It doesn't sound that great in a lot of areas, and while I think it's cool that Paul got to go out of his way and try a lot of new things, I don't think all these experiments totally paid off. And now that we have 858, there's just not quite as much reason to come back to this one outside of a couple of standout tracks and just the novelty of Paul Hartnoll trying out these kinds of sounds. I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about The Ideal Condition, and I think it is worth checking out. But between my personal disappointment and just the knowledge that Paul's capable of better, yeah, just doesn't quite do it for me personally. I can't imagine I'd return to it quite as much if Paul's name wasn't on it. Yeah, I'm overall feeling a 6.7 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.